Well, ESPN's Todd McShay thinks Bijan Robinson is the second best player in the entire draft class, and he also thinks the Dallas Cowboys are in love with him and could trade up. Does that mean Philadelphia has to take him at 10? Could they move back and still get him? We're going to debate that today, and also take a look at Olamide Zaccheaus, your new wide receiver slot expert number 3 on Thomas Mott. This is the Thomas Mott Show. What's up, guys? Thomas Mott here. Welcome to the Thomas Mott Show on a Thursday. It's obviously 1 week until the NFL draft. Thumbs up for 7 more days, and then all the speculation ends because we're actually going to know what's happening. Let's jump into a little Bijan Robinson conversation because Todd McShay was on the Dan Patrick Show the other day, and he gave a very, very interesting take on not only how good Bijan Robinson is, but the fact that Philadelphia at 10, and then a couple of other teams, including the Dallas Cowboys, I know, are the top favorites to go ahead and land Bijan. And I think he's hinting that Dallas would be willing to trade up to get Bijan Robinson. Let's go ahead and take a listen.
I've got him as the number 2 ranked player in this class behind Bryce Young. I haven't talked to a team, and I'm talking probably close to a dozen teams, that have him outside of the top 5. Everyone has him in the top 5 in terms of their grades. Now, where does he fall? That's the fascinating part. I mean, Philadelphia doesn't take a running back in the top 10. They love taking offensive and defensive linemen, but that's the first spot where you can look and say, that might make some sense. I think he's just as talented, maybe a little bit more unique than Saquon Barkley, and Saquon was the number 2 overall pick. But you see the beating and the injuries that Saquon had, and you just wonder, is it worth it? So it may get down to like 18 to Detroit, 21 to the Chargers with Austin Eckler having issues there. Yeah. And I still hold this out. Dallas is obsessed with getting a running back that can be their guy, be a compliment to Tony Pollard like they had with Zeke when Zeke was, more closer to his prime. Mike McCarthy was dying for a big power back like that, wants to run the football. They want to be a run-based team, and they would love to bring the Texas star into Dallas and make him the star of their offense. So Dallas is sitting at 26. It wouldn't shock me if they made a splash, jumped up into the teens ahead of teams like Detroit and the Chargers, and went and got Bijan maybe around like 14, 15, 16.
All right, a lot to unpack there. First off, saying that he's number 2 in the entire draft class behind Bryce Young. That shows you how high Todd McShay is on Bijan Robinson. Doesn't mean he will go number 2. The Texans aren't going to take him. They're going to take a quarterback or a defensive lineman. But where will Bijan fall? And I think the interesting part and the thing we need to discuss here is the possibility that the Eagles would not be able to trade back and still land Bijan. Because there's this whole conversation. Okay, do you take Bijan at 10? Let's say the answer is no. Let's say they get offered to trade back to 13 or trade back to 12 or trade back to 14 or trade back to 16 or even go back as far as maybe the Bucks at 19, right? All been discussed. However, the issue then looms. The further you go back, the more you open yourself up to be traded ahead of by a football team that really wants Bijan Robinson. A couple of ones that were mentioned, obviously, by Todd McShay are the Chargers sitting there at 22, the Buffalo Bills at 28, and those pesky Dallas Cowboys at 27. So you're telling me, let's say the Eagles go back to 17 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. That's been a rumored trade saying Pittsburgh wants to come up and get a pass rusher or a defensive lineman. What happens when Dallas goes up to 16, trades with Washington, and takes Bijan one spot ahead of you? I don't think it's possible for the Eagles to trade back and still get Bijan Robinson. I think your best bet, if you really want him, is going to go ahead and be number 10. Now, there have been reports that Nick Sirianni loves Bijan Robinson, that Jeffrey Lurie loves Bijan Robinson, heard stuff about how Howie Roseman doesn't like Bijan Robinson, he likes Paris Johnson. So then you have a situation where who's going to play out, or who's going to win out? Your coach, your owner, or is it going to be the GM who basically runs this football team and has created a very, very impressive roster almost his entire tenure, but especially in the last couple of years? If Dallas really loves Bijan Robinson, they are a serious threat to the point that you either take him at 10 or you accept the fact that Dallas is going to go ahead and trade up to draft him. And now Bijan on the Dallas Cowboys, let's be honest. When was Dak Prescott his best? He was at his best when Zeke Elliott was very, very good. You think back to that 12-win season they had a couple of years ago where Dak was seemingly, a potential MVP candidate. It was due to the fact that not only they had good weapons on the outside, but they had a very solid rushing attack with Zeke Elliott during his prime that you really couldn't stop. And whether that it actually makes the Dallas Cowboys Super Bowl contenders, I would say no, but it does make them a lot scarier than where they would be currently as their roster is constructed with a Tony Pollard coming off of a serious ankle injury and a situation where Dak is continuing to be Dak. And so I want to keep a definite eye on this situation. I think draft night is going to be absolutely fascinating. I don't see Dallas trading ahead of Philadelphia inside the top 10, and so the Eagles are going to get to control the Bijan Robinson sweepstakes and their own destiny in terms of drafting the guy. And so I think we got to be really careful about this whole idea of trading back just so that way you can have a situation where you have a chance to get more draft picks and still get Bijan, because I don't buy it. I think you either get him at 10 or you're not going to go ahead and get him at all. What do you guys think? Are you worried about Dallas? Are you worried about the Dallas Cowboys trading up to go get Bijan Robinson? If so, would you take him at number 10? Let me know down below in the comment section. Thumbs up if you just want to make sure Bijan isn't a Cowboy, right? You don't care if he's an Eagle or not, but you don't want him to be a Cowboy. Give the show a thumbs up. Speaking of Todd McShay, he has a brand new 3-round mock draft, which is very fascinating. I think a really good look at what the Eagles could potentially do. He has Bijan Robinson going number 10 to the Philadelphia Eagles. He's done it twice now in his mock drafts, and he says some interesting stuff about this. Quote, "Look, I know he might not go at this high. We can spend hours talking about running back value in round 1, but Bijan Robinson is my number 2 overall prospect and makes sense in this Eagles offense. He is the complete back who would dominate alongside newly extended quarterback Jalen Hurts in the backfield." So McShay putting his money where his mouth is, Philly Bijan at number 10. Then you get to 30. This would be, honestly, a solid first round with Bijan at 10 and still a pass rusher at 30. How about Myles Murphy falling all the way down to number 30 overall? And you see the quote here from from McShay. How about the other really good defensive lineman from Clemson? The Eagles' D-line was excellent last season, recording 70 sacks, but the unit is aging and could have depth issues. Murphy has the burst to get home on the quarterback and fits what the Eagles like to do in round 1, build up the trenches. Now, will Murphy be there at 30? In McShay's mock, he did, but I don't know if Murphy's going to fall that far. I think he is one of the better pass rushers in this draft, but this first-round combo of Bijan at 10 and Myles Murphy at 30 would be an absolute home run. Thumbs up for that. Good job by Todd McShay. Next, he has Zach Pickens, the defensive tackle at 62 overall, and Pickens was a really, really good defensive tackle coming out of high school. He's been fine so far with South Carolina, but there's a reason he'd be a second-rounder due to the fact the production has not been equal to being the number 1 defensive tackle prospect coming out of high school. McShay says this: "More trench warfare for the Eagles. Fletcher Cox is 32 years old and on a 1-year deal. Bringing in explosive, powerful, and versatile defensive lineman to stack next to Jordan Davis in the future is a good use of this late pick in round 2. Again, I agree. You're talking about someone who can come in, be rotational, learn behind the best, and join a hopefully up-and-coming D-tackle group that would include Milton Williams and Jordan Davis. Next on this list at 94, you get Blake Freeland, the offensive tackle out of BYU, and this is no surprise because Philadelphia always wants to get offensive linemen. The fact they wait this long to pick 94 is a little bit surprising, but here you go with McShay. I ended up with all 4 picks for Philly here, and I'm capping them off with a quick-footed zone blocker who can provide depth for the Eagles line. Once you open up some running lanes for new back Bijan Robinson. He's versatile. He can play tackle. You can move him over to guard if you really want to, but they do get an offensive lineman to go with 2 defensive linemen and a running back. That feels like a Howie Roseman draft. Minus Bijan at 10, it feels like a Howie Roseman draft, and if you're in a scenario where Philadelphia has a head coach and an owner who loves Bijan, maybe they can, take the running back at 10 and then just let Howie go ham on linemen the rest of the draft. That way you can kind of even out there if Howie is not exactly thrilled about the idea of Bijan Robinson coming to Philadelphia. What do you guys think of Todd McShay's mock draft? I think it's pretty darn good. I think it's one of the better ones we've seen. You see Kuiper kind of mix things in there. Thankfully, no Skoronski, no Paris Johnson at 10. I've said it last night during our Wednesday Link Live. I do think that those two are kind of very much in play at number 10, but this would be a very, very good mock draft. I would give this an A+ if this is what Philadelphia is able to do. Now, there are no trades here. Obviously, McShay didn't do trades in this draft, but you'd think Philly would go up and down at least in round 2 and round 3, but we shall see. Okay, mentioned Olamide Zaccheaus yesterday on the Wednesday live show. I want to give a little more of a take here on the situation. Bleeding Green Nation has a good write-up here. Quote, Zaccheaus had somewhat curiously lingered on the open market despite being 25 years old, coming off a career season. The 2019 undrafted rookie free agent saw 61 targets for 40 receptions, 533 yards, and 3 touchdowns with the Atlanta Falcons last year. Quarterbacks had a 109.5 passer rating when throwing his way. Perhaps teams were deterred by his size. Listed at 5'8", 193. He's certainly not the most physical, imposing player. He's not. He also is not an amazing athlete, relatively speaking, aka he's not that fast. End quote. Here's the take on Zaccheaus. I live in Atlanta. I've covered the Atlanta Falcons in the past. I used to host the Falcons postgame show on the Atlanta Falcons radio network, the Caller postgame show. Zaccheaus is a good player. Now, what they're not talking about is that he did do some special teams kick returning and punt returning during his time in Atlanta, and could make some sense there in terms of a punt returner. Think Nelson Aguilar before Aguilar really started to come into his own, a little bit undersized, but a slot person who can make some across-the-middle catches, who likes to hang on to the football, has a good reception rate. I think it's a solid pickup. Does it guarantee he's going to start ahead of Quez Watkins as your number 3 wide receiver? No, but I do think there's a very good chance he's going to have a really open opportunity to be the wide receiver number 3, and I'm okay with that. Zaccheaus is, again, lingering a little bit on the free agent market. I think teams who would consider Zaccheaus are looking more towards the draft. Think about a Marvin Mims out of Oklahoma. With Philadelphia not having many draft picks, especially in the middle of the NFL draft, 4th round, 5th round, they go for their wide receiver in free agency. We don't know the contract money yet, but I expect a really cheap deal where Zaccheaus can prove himself and maybe get an extension in Philadelphia or somewhere else in 2024. There you go. There's all this stuff happening today on the Thomas Mott Show. Again, we're going to be less than 6 days away from the draft tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe. The rumor mill is going to go nuts the next couple of days in the National Football League. Could there be trades? Could there be signings? Could there be moves up and down the draft? Who knows? We'll cover it here on what's going to be a very fun week overall. I'm Thomas Mott. This has been the Thomas Mott Show.